Welcome back to the Girl Out of Order podcast. Well, we are coming off of Mother's Day weekend, and I hope that you felt so blessed. I hope you were celebrated. And if you don't have people in your life celebrating you, I hope, sister, you celebrated your beautiful self. I hope you had time to spend with your mamas, your grandmas, your aunties, as my friend says, her aunties. My friend is an incredible auntie. I don't care if you're a mama of a human, a mama of a fur baby, if you are an auntie or auntie, if you are a friend, just a special presence in the life of a younger person. You give off mama energy to your tribe. I pray you are celebrated. Mother's Day is such a complicated time of the year for a lot of us for myriad reasons. So today on the podcast, I want to address a really tricky but essential topic. Today, we are going to talk about healing mother wounds. Now, I know this isn't your woo, let's talk about all of our personal growth and our celebrating our successes. And, look, Christine loves to do all that. But here's the deal. At Girl Out of Order, we are all about living authentically. We are all about leaning into our vulnerability, about being brave and really pursuing our truest identities and no longer agreeing to chisel ourselves down or contort ourselves to fit a mold. We were never designed to thrive within. So in order to really tackle that, especially that last part, at Girl Out of Order, we want to dust off everything. We want to get into all the corners of our lives, because if we're going to have a truly authentic and life-changing journey of identity work, we've got to be willing to go to those dark places, those uncomfortable topics, and say the quiet part out loud. So today's episode, I'm giving you permission, and I'm giving myself permission to say the quiet part out loud. Yes, I miss my mom very much. I hate the fact that I can't pick up the phone and I can't talk to her. I can't hug her. I can't see her. And what is also true is we had a very wounding relationship. And I do not believe that it is dishonoring to her memory to tell it like it accurately was. So sisters, as you're listening to this podcast today, I ask you, do you have mother wounds? Do you have sometimes unspoken aches inside you that you can't actually explain? You don't know their origin. You just feel their effects. Sometimes in everything you do, say, think, believe, feel, react. You just know it's there. It's like this invisible force that infuses everything you do, how you react to certain situations, whether you stand tall or shrink back. Oftentimes, you can trace its origin to what I call, what is called, I didn't come up with this, come on, mother wounds. So what the heck are mother wounds? I think we understand the term mother, we understand the term wounds. When we put them together, what are we talking about? So mother wounds typically, typical, whatever, refers to emotional, mental, or spiritual injuries inflicted by one's mother, either during childhood or later in life, or in my case, both. I want to pull that sentence apart because I really want you to get this, because even if you don't feel that you have mother wounds, let's say you have a phenomenal relationship with your mama, and I'm telling you that is my prayer for my daughters, that they will rise up into these amazing adults who are like, I freaking love my mom. We have a great relationship. When she bothers me, I can tell her. I want that for my children. I want them to have that kind of relationship with me. And that has been my goal from day one, is to chart a completely different course. But here's the situation. Very few of us have that. Very few. So let's pull that sentence apart. A mother wound refers to emotional, mental, or God forbid, spiritual injuries that are often inadvertently inflicted on us by our moms. Hey, here's the thing. I will scream this from the rooftop to the day I die. I know my mom did the best that she could with what she had and how she could function in life, but it wasn't enough for me. It wasn't enough for my brother. We wanted, needed, and deserved more than she gave us. But do I think she maliciously, callously withheld herself from us? No. But does it change the effect and the impact? No, it does not. So as you're listening to this, sister, what mother wounds do you have? Can you point to things in your life where, if you were being really honest and not afraid to hurt anybody's feelings or let anybody down or disparage anybody's memory, would you be honest and say, my mom was not good for me, or my mom was not enough for me? These wounds, sisters, they can stem from all kinds of sources. And when you understand the root cause of these wounds, then you can begin the healing and the personal growth through these wounds. Because I believe what Tony Robbins says when he says, life is happening for me. If I choose to believe life is happening for me, then I can look back on my life and see that little girl in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade sitting outside that junior high after her concert, waiting for hours after everybody else was gone for her mom to pick her up because she forgot, she was busy, she was working, she couldn't be bothered to be on time. Because it was the 80s. There was no cell phones. There was just me sitting outside the school with my saxophone case, waiting. Just waiting. And she got there when she got there. And there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. There's a lot of common sources of these mother wounds. Do I think my mom maliciously left me sitting there and didn't care? No, I don't think that. I just think she was so caught up in her own needs, deficiencies, longings, and desperation to put me first. And it would be insane if I didn't have wounds from that. One of the common mother wounds is neglect. Emotional neglect, where a child's needs are consistently ignored or unmet. And you know what that happens, sisters? And this is what happened to me. It can lead to feelings of abandonment and low self-worth. So we've been on this worthy journey for the last 2 months in Girl Out of Order, right? Some of our worthy journey is interwoven with these mother wounds because we have to peel back the layers. And if you're on YouTube, by the way, there's these weird thumbs up things happening. Sisters, I don't understand this. I don't know how to stop it, but I guess thumbs up was warranted totally in the middle of this very serious topic. I guess you have to have a little bit of a sense of humor. But neglect is probably one of the most insidious forms of mother wounds because it can be so subtle. I played cards with my girls at the table. I have 4 daughters. If you don't know that already, I run my own girl gang. And I literally, even if I'm not playing, I love to watch them sitting at the table playing cards. It's like this flutter in my chest. And I've never really thought about it until I started preparing for this podcast. And I thought, holy smokes. All I ever wanted my mom to do was to play a card game with me. And I can remember the euphoria I felt when she would sit down and play Crazy Eights or Uno. That's all we had. It was the 80s. What can I tell you? But I remember thinking, this is the best. This is the best. She's giving me her attention. She's playing cards with me. It's all about me. We didn't have cell phones. There was literally no distractions. But it was so rare. And so I'm going to weave in these healing principles as we talk about mother wounds. Because here's how you heal neglect and how it impacted you as a person. I do not neglect my children. I do not neglect myself. I have done the work. I have done the therapy. I have done the prayer, and I have gotten routines infused into my life that tell me I am worthy of time. I am worthy of attention. I am worthy of focus. I am worthy. Period. And then I turn that around and I give that to my children. Sometimes to a fault. And that's one of the things that we have to be so careful about when we're healing from mother wounds, is that we don't swing that pendulum so far the other way that we end up denying our own needs in a desperate attempt to make sure our children never feel the same wounds we felt. And I have done that so many times, especially when it comes to this neglect piece. I remember a time I was at a spent half my mothering my children at soccer fields, but the bathrooms were so far away. And I was so busy getting the snacks for the kids and getting them this, team snacks and getting them to the cars. And I remember thinking, I have to go to the bathroom so bad. And I denied my urination signals for so long that by the time I ran across the field, I barely made it to an outhouse, and I didn't even get a chance to pull my pants down. I just peed myself in a cold outhouse. And I remember laughing almost kind of crazy, like really? This is really happening? Because I had denied my needs so much because I desperately didn't want my children to feel neglected. But what I did is I put on them expectations of me that they never had. So when we're healing from neglect that we received from our mother, there has to be balance. And there has to be healing that is done through work and therapy. And there's EFT techniques. There's all kinds of ways we can work through this. But the first thing is awareness. Becoming aware of where these patterns have come from. And that's what we do at Girl Out of Order. That's what I'm doing in my Own Your Identity Mastermind. We're peeling back the layers of whatever has happened to us that has created patterns and habits that have kept us stuck, that have kept us small, and have kept us deceived. What about criticism? This was not a problem in my home, but I know so many women that have endured relentless criticism from their moms. I have a friend who was kicked out of her home with nowhere to go because she had the audacity to want to move from where she was living to where she and her husband were going to be settling, and told that she was the reason her mom was so miserable, that she was a failure. She was a terrible Christian. Persistent criticism or unrealistic expectations can completely diminish a child's or an adult child's self-esteem. Can you imagine when you stop and think, do you have an inner shitty committee? Yeah, I love that phrase. One of my favorite phrases I ever got from my coach. Shitty committee. It's this persistent chatter in your head that is this harsh inner critic. Where did it come from? Ask yourself, did it come from a mother wound? Did it come from things she said or things she didn't say but you knew she meant? Because we can tell. And I'm letting you know that right now, for the first time ever, recording a Girl Out of Order podcast, I'm actually drinking wine because this is a very painful topic and wine just felt appropriate. And it's Mother's Day when I'm recording it, so I can have wine if I want, right? The answer is right. What about absence? What about absence? Absence is one of my deepest childhood mother wounds. It is the uncomfortable cousin of neglect. My mom always made sure I had my physical needs met. Absolutely. She was amazing. She worked herself to the bone to provide for us. But she was always gone. Always gone. My mom didn't leave our family. Not really. But even as an adult, when with my own children, and the older ones still remember this, we would be having Thanksgiving dinner and my mom would get up in the middle of dinner and leave to go take care of a home health client because she never said no to them because it was okay to say no to us. We actually used to get in trouble, my brother and I, from my dad when we asked, "Where's mom?" It was like we were not allowed to ask where mom was because she chose everybody and everything above being with us. It has caused such deep-seated feelings of being unloved, unchosen, unwanted, undesired, and insecure in my life. And I know there are so many of you out there that can relate to this. There are women out there whose moms literally abandoned the home and said bye and just left. I'm not saying one's worse than the other. They just both are really tragic and can cause deep wounds. So what do we do about absence? We choose to be present, sisters, for ourselves first. Because when you have a mom who is absent and who chose to pour into everybody else except for you, unless it fit into her mold, into her expectations, into her schedule, you neglect yourself. And so to turn that around, we have to start believing that we are worthy of time, that we are worthy of the investment. And we might have to be a little awkward at first in investing in ourselves, but then we show our babies that they are worth our time, that they are worth our intentionality, that they are worth our presence, and we find balance because we don't want to go so far the other way that we become so child-centered that the child looks at you as this martyr who's giving up yourself joyfully, and then they go and they repeat the pattern that has exhausted you and left you depleted and still feeling unseen. Are you hearing the theme? It's about balance. It's about balancing out the scales of the injustices you experienced as a child and often as an adult child. What about enmeshment? Also something that I struggled so much with. My mom was so absent when I was a child that as we got older, as I became an adult, she wanted to enmesh herself in my life. I think because she was trying to make up for all the things that had gone wrong, all the things that she had not given me. She's not here to ask anymore, and I wish she was, because I'm in such a healthy place. I would give anything to have an opportunity to have a healthy relationship with her. But she was suffocating. And I still miss her. Sisters, hear me. It's okay to feel both. It's okay to miss your mom desperately and be relieved that the unhealthiness of that relationship is no longer a part of your life. I will not feel guilty about it because I can still honor the incredible woman that my mom was. And she was a badass. She was a lover. She was a giver. And she was a flawed human being. And aren't we all? So I want to explore this because I've seen this with so many women that I know. What is enmeshment? Do you know what that means? It's kind of one of those, like, I know it when I see it, but could I explain it? Not necessarily. But let me make it very clear. It's a lack of boundaries between mother and child. And it can hinder a child's ability to develop a separate identity, leading to profound difficulties in establishing healthy relationships in adulthood. It's the definition of codependency. I see this sometimes in my divorce clients when they are so riddled with guilt and they are so desperate for connection with their children. And they're so lacking in that intimacy because they've lost that relationship that they put too much on that child and they become enmeshed. And then that child cannot fully fly out of the nest because they're so torn, because they're so close to mama, which is a beautiful thing, but it's not a healthy closeness. Enmeshment messes with you, and it is very subtle. Sometimes it's screamy, but oftentimes it is a subtle impact. It's like you can see it, but you can't quite name it, but you can feel it. And the real telltale sign often is your partner can really see it. And you're like, oh, but I'm just so close with my mom. Do you guys ever see Bad Moms Christmas? I just thought of this as I was talking about enmeshment. So Bad Moms Christmas was raunchy for sure. It's not something you'd want to watch with your younger children. But one of the moms in the movie, one of the stars, her mom comes to visit and she literally has pajamas with her daughter's face all over them. And then she gets her hair cut like her daughter. It's such an exaggeration. It's such a caricature of enmeshment. But that shit's real, man. My daughters can tell you that when my mom lived with me, they were just uncomfortable because they would watch how my mom would be like, Chris, where are you? Chris, where are you? And she would follow me around and want to just sit with me and talk with me, which is beautiful. And trust me, now that she's gone, I would give just about anything to have a conversation with her. But at the time, there was just no recognition of healthy boundaries. So when you're pulling yourself out of a codependent relationship, you need help. I'm not here to help you. I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist, but I'm telling you, I've gotten a lot of therapy for this. Because it is so subtle and because it is so creeping, I urge you to get yourself a good counselor that can help you sort out fact from fiction, that can help you sort out what is yours, what is hers, and pull it apart so that you can live healthy, independent lives where you choose each other, not where you need each other. Now, these next two, thankfully, are not common in the people's lives that I know, but I know they are common out there because of what I do for a living. Any form of abuse by a mother can deeply, deeply traumatize a child and can cause mental health problems, if not mental health disease. Substance abuse is an ugly cousin of abuse. Any struggle with addiction by a mom creates such an unstable and chaotic home environment that it can completely knock out the foundation of a child's sense of security and really hinder normal development. So if you have had a mom who either abused you or abused somebody in your home or struggled with any form of addiction, I'm not talking just alcohol and drugs. It could be sex addiction. It could be gambling, shopping, anything where she has an addiction to something. You might have to deal with that mother wound, most likely in therapy, and get help. You might have aspects of PTSD if you were in, if you were victimized by any kind of physical, okay, seriously, there's some really wacky, there's some really wacky things going on in my video. Terrible timing. Here I'm talking about abuse and substance abuse, and I really think I just saw fireworks go off. I don't know what's going on, but I got to admit, it makes me laugh a little bit because humor is one of the ways that this girl deals with hard topics. So I hope you don't think I'm insensitive, because I'm definitely not. I have sat across the desk from so many women with black eyes and broken arms and broken hearts that I don't take this lightly. But we all cope in different ways, and sometimes Christine laughs inappropriately. I hope you just understand that's the way that I authentically deal with difficult topics. Couple more. Projection. Ooh, this is a tough one. Projection. A mom projecting her own unresolved issues, fears, and expectations onto the child really screws them up. Because what you do, or what you've experienced if your mama did that to you, is you've had to grow up really freaking fast. My mom's unresolved issues, she carried it through all the way to her death. And she projected a lot of that on me, needing me to fill the void that she had in her life because she never dealt with all of her underlying issues. And then the last thing, and this one I thankfully don't see a lot of, but I know it exists, and sometimes it exists subtly, is comparison. Constantly comparing a child to siblings or peers, ooh, that can create so much inadequacy and low self-esteem. I will say, as a mama, I've inadvertently done this to one of my children. And it's not because I meant to, but it's like, why do you do that when you're blah, blah, blah? Didn't you see how easy it is to do that? I'm like, oh, I'm not comparing them, but aren't you? So when you're working through these mother wounds, I ask you, if you are momming, be honest. Not only is this important for you to hear so that you can deal with your own mother wounds, but it is important for you and I to hear this message so we can fix any mother wounds that might be in progress from our own mothering of our children. Because I know I'm convicted. I know I feel this. And I know I am longing to change this. So where do you begin? Well, like I said, as we were weaving this throughout there, you got to acknowledge this shit exists. You have to acknowledge that there's a problem. You have to acknowledge and accept that these experiences have impacted you and that it's impacting your children. Until you acknowledge it, until you become aware, you are going to stay stuck in that whirlpool of generational impact. And don't you want to be a chain breaker? Don't you want to break the chain of abuse, neglect, projection, enmeshment, any form of mother wounds? You have the option to break that dynamic and obliterate it from your family tree. But you got to be aware. And I mean it when I say seek professional support, especially for things like abuse and neglect and enmeshment, because it takes work. You need to create new neural pathways in your brain and new habits, and you've got to get leverage over whatever it is you want to change. So get an effective therapist, especially one that is trained in the family dynamics or trauma. Don't just get somebody out of the freaking phone book. Do your research. Get that person that's going to walk alongside you, call you to a higher standard. Get into a mastermind of amazing women who are going where you're going and will not let you sit in your excuses. And find people who can support you and affirm what it is you're feeling is wrong in your soul. You want to educate yourself. Read up on this stuff. Listen to fabulous podcasts like this. Give yourself compassion. Sister, listen to me. You don't have to write a book like this old Disney star. I'm not old. She's not old. She's young. But when she said, I'm glad my mother's dead, I mean, that was an intense act of therapy for her. Bless her. That's what she needed to do. You don't have to go that far. But it's okay to feel the both and to miss her or to love her if she's still here and need your space, or to miss her if she's gone and be relieved. Because at the beginning of this podcast, I said, God, I'd give anything to be able to talk to my mom again. And that's true. That's 100% true. And those conversations were often extremely draining. And it messed with my brain and it hindered my growth and it made me feel so off kilter, like a top spinning on a table, and she'd come by and flick it. And she never meant to do it. She was doing the best she could. And I love her and I forgive her and I miss her so freaking much. And it's okay to acknowledge that I had and have those mother wounds. Then you build healthy relationships. You replace that difficult mother relationship with healthy relationships with your own children or your nieces and nephews or your grandchildren. All of those relationships, you get to control what goes on between your own ears and what comes out of your mouth and the relationships that you form as far as it depends on you. You get to chart a new course, create new traditions, respect boundaries, but demand respect and inclusion. And then let's talk about the B word, boundaries. I'm going to take a drink of wine for that one. All right, let's get real. Boundaries are freaking hard. I have a family member, and she and I have done so much parallel personal growth development work. And her mother wounds are with a mother who's still alive and a very loving, amazing woman who just needed some boundaries placed between mother and daughter. Because without those boundaries between mother and daughter just continued to shrink herself down, to play small, to question her own intelligence and intuition. And so when daughter began to rise up, to do that identity work, to step into the light and out from the shadows, she then started to establish boundaries. Well, that does not usually go well with the person with whom you are enmeshed. But establishing boundaries doesn't just honor you. It honors the person, believe it or not, that you're setting the boundaries with. But here's more important. You are setting an example for your children and your children's children. Because we often emulate what we see in our moms. And when we want to chart a different course, we need leverage to create these new patterns, right? Leverage, small hinges swing big ass doors, sisters. So that small hinge for me is I want to be a woman with healthy boundaries that respect my daughter's boundaries, but also I invite myself into their life. But I'm always very clear that I will respect their boundaries and I will respect mine. And they see me living a life of autonomy and integrity and congruence. And so now I'm raising 4 daughters who hopefully will go out and do the same for themselves and create family lives that do the same. Boundaries are so important. Now here's a little bit of a to-do, if you will, but only if you want to. I'm inviting you to consider it's not really a phrase I use very often, but it's called expressive therapies. And if that turns you off, just think about like journaling, okay? Just journal. Write out your thoughts. Write out your feelings. When you have a day where mother wounds are really present, write it out. When you have a day where you rose above those mother wounds, write it out. Get it out of your soul and onto the paper, because here's the thing. I have been journaling for years and years and years, and I can go back and look at my journals when my mom was still alive, and I can see how I worked through some of these issues by writing. Maybe you're into art, music. I'm not into that kind of stuff, but that doesn't mean you're not. But something to express your feelings and thoughts when it's difficult to articulate it verbally. And then the last thing I will say, and this is going to be my drum beat, community. Creating a healthy community that reflects your most deeply held values. Whether it's a support group, I know there's support groups for just about everything. Definitely if you are a child of an alcoholic or any kind of addiction, there are support groups out there. And I'm talking about creating community with people that are going where you're going, that believe like you believe, and that value things the way that you value them. Places that you can bounce things off of, where you can get support and feedback and constructive feedback, sisters. You know, to be open to that. But creating a sense of community is one of the most powerful and potent tools to work through mother wounds and to begin healing for generations to come. So we're coming off of Mother's Day weekend, and it's not an easy time for a lot of women, whether your mother's gone or like a really dear friend of mine whose mother is mentally ill and is gone in a very abusive way, or whether you always long to be a mom and you have that kind of wound. Mama's Day is not an easy time of the year for some of us, for many, many of us. I want you to know that there is hope, there is healing, and you will come out on the other side. But you've got to become aware of what is infusing your decisions and your reactions to life. And then you get to choose to chart a new course. You are not stuck, sisters. You are not defined by the wounds that you've experienced in your own relationship with your mama. And I want you to have the freedom to speak those wounds out and understand that it's not disrespectful of mama to acknowledge what's real, because sometimes those wounds have been allowed to fester because we haven't acknowledged what is real, because we refuse to call it like we see it. I have a close family member whose mom died very young and very suddenly. And when she got married, we put a flower on an empty chair for her. And I remember watching her weep. And I knew that her weeping was so much more than that empty chair. But that weeping was also for what her mom didn't give her when she was here. You're not alone. I see you, sister, in your mother wounds. I feel you deeply in my soul with your mother wounds. I am you with your mother wounds. But I'm on the other side of it, and I am healing, and I am growing, and I am using my experiences to help others like you. Because those mother wounds make you more equipped to help other women. So don't deny it. Don't minimize it. And don't neglect the opportunity to use it to be a light and a beacon of hope for other women. even the little women that you might be raising. We're in this together. And this is not the end of your story. You can change your story, and you can change your life. And your life is waiting for you to fully show up. And I know you will. Because we're in this together. Forever and ever, as a tribe of girls out of order. Happy Mother's Day. You are amazing. You are doing amazing. And I know that you're just going to keep doing more and more amazing things as you heal, grow, transform. Because you're incredible. Thank you for joining us today.